Rain pummeled the city streets with relentless intensity, transforming the bustling metropolis into a glistening, somber landscape. Sheets of water cascaded from rooftops, thunder rumbled overhead, and pedestrians scurried for shelter like scattered ants. Through this aquatic symphony, a sleek black Bentley glided with quiet authority, its tinted windows separating its occupant from the harsh realities outside. Inside the climate-controlled sanctuary, Maxwell Reed scrolled through acquisition, reports on his tablet, his weathered face illuminated by the cold blue glow of the screen. 52 years old, worth $9 billion, named Businessman of the Decade by Forbes, creator of technology used by 3 billion people worldwide, and utterly, completely alone. His manicured fingers swiped through profit projections for the West Side Development Project. The numbers were impressive, even by his standards. Another victory in a life defined by conquests, yet oddly devoid of celebration. "The board expects your decision by morning, sir," his assistant Jenkins reminded from the front passenger seat, his voice precise and deferential. "Mr. Henderson called twice during your meeting. He's eager to proceed with the demolition permits." Maxwell didn't respond. He'd built Reed Technologies from nothing, from a garage startup to a tech empire with offices in 27 countries. Yet something hollow echoed inside him with each achievement, always there, growing larger with each success, a void that acquisitions and assets couldn't seem to fill. "Your dinner with Senator Bradshaw is at 8, Jenkins continued, checking his digital planner. "I've taken the liberty of—" "Stop the car!" The words left Maxwell's mouth before he realized he'd spoken, surprising even himself. "Sir?" Jenkins turned, his professionally neutral expression slipping momentarily. "I said, stop the car." Maxwell's voice hardened the way it did in boardrooms when he was about to acquire another company or cut loose an underperforming division. Non-negotiable. Through the downpour, penetrating the soundproofed interior of the luxury vehicle, a sound had reached him. A voice. Pure, clear, singing. It pierced through the ambient noise of rain, traffic, and his own thought processes with startling clarity. "Right here, Harrison," Jenkins instructed the driver, with a confused glance at his employer. The Bentley pulled smoothly to the curb, and there on the corner, partially sheltered by a torn, faded store awning, stood a small figure, a child no more than 5 years old, her tiny hand clasped in her mother's larger, protective one. Both were soaked despite their meager shelter, their possessions piled in a rusted shopping cart nearby covered with a plastic tarp. Their clothes were worn but clean, the unmistakable sign of recent misfortune rather than chronic homelessness. But the little girl was singing a lullaby. Not just any lullaby, but one Maxwell hadn't heard in decades. One his own mother had sung to him in a shelter much like the one undoubtedly awaiting this pair if they were lucky enough to find space tonight. "Wait here," he told his driver, grabbing his umbrella from the door compartment. Jenkins's protests about his schedule faded into background noise. "Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Have you ever encountered a moment that stopped you in your tracks? A sound, a sight, a memory that broke through your routine and changed everything?" Maxwell stepped onto the wet sidewalk, his $2,000 Italian leather shoes splashing through puddles he didn't notice. Raindrops immediately assaulted his tailored suit despite the umbrella. As he approached, the little girl's voice grew clearer, purer. Her song about stars shining through darkness wrapped around his heart, like hands squeezing an overripe fruit. Something inside his chest tightened, cracked, shattered. And for the first time in 27 years, since he'd buried his mother and vowed never to be vulnerable again, Maxwell Reed felt tears on his face, indistinguishable from the rain, except for their warmth and the unfamiliar ache that accompanied them. "She has her grandmother's voice," the woman said quietly, noticing Maxwell's approach, but showing no surprise at the appearance of a well-dressed stranger in the rain. Exhaustion lined her face, the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from constant vigilance and worry, but dignity remained in her posture. Her clothes, though damp and worn, were clean and carefully mended. "I'm Sarah. This is Lily." Maxwell stood transfixed, water running down his neck despite his umbrella. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been speechless. In boardrooms and business negotiations, his words were weapons, precisely deployed for maximum effect. Here on this rainy street corner, those weapons had mysteriously disappeared from his arsenal. The little girl stopped singing, looking up at Maxwell with eyes too wise for her years. No fear, no judgment, just pure curiosity that pierced straight through the carefully constructed facade he'd spent decades perfecting. Her hair hung in wet ringlets around a heart-shaped face, and, despite her circumstances, a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "I'm Maxwell," he said, forgetting to use his rehearsed business introduction with its intimidating credentials. "That song my mommy taught me," Lily announced proudly. Her small voice, somehow stronger than her tiny frame, suggested. "It's a special song for rainy days. It makes people happy when they're sad." She tilted her head, studying him with uncomfortable perception. "Are you sad, mister?" Maxwell felt something crack further inside him, a fissure widening in walls built long ago. Without thinking, he knelt down on the wet pavement, ruining his $3,000 suit pants, bringing himself to the child's eye level. His umbrella shifted, now sheltering the girl more than himself. "Everyone gets sad sometimes," he managed, the honesty of his response surprising him. From inside the expensive car, Jenkins watched with growing concern as Maxwell Reed, the man renowned for his ruthless efficiency, who'd once fired an executive for taking too long in a meeting, engaged with homeless strangers on a street corner in the pouring rain. Harrison, the driver, discreetly checked his watch. "Where are you staying?" "Tonight?" Maxwell asked, looking up at Sarah, noting the shadows beneath her eyes, the careful way she positioned herself slightly in front of her daughter. Protective, fierce despite her exhaustion. Her eyes dropped momentarily, the only time her composure faltered. "We were headed to the shelter on 9th, but they're usually full by now." The resignation in her voice spoke of too many nights turned away, too many disappointments. In the shopping cart, Maxwell noticed a small, worn wooden box. It's a varnish dulled with age, a tarnished latch on its front. Lily followed his gaze and brightened. "That's my music box. It was Grandma's before the angels took her to heaven." She mimed turning a key. "It plays the same song I was singing, but sometimes the angel inside gets tired." Something shifted, decisively inside Maxwell, like tectonic plates, realigning after years of pressure. A decision formed, bypassing his usual calculated risk assessment. "I have room," he said, the words tumbling out before his strategic thinking could intervene. A lot of room, actually. Rain continued to soak through his jacket as he straightened, his umbrella still angled to cover Lily more than himself. Would you both like to stay somewhere dry tonight?" Sarah's eyes narrowed with the suspicion of someone who'd learned that unexpected generosity often came with hidden costs. Her arm tightened around Lily's shoulders. "That's very kind, but we couldn't possibly—" "Oh, please, Mommy," Lily interrupted, looking up with hope that broke through her mother's protective cynicism. "I'm cold, and Mr. Maxwell has sad eyes like Mr. Bear did before we gave him soup." Sarah hesitated, weighing immediate needs against potential dangers. Maxwell stood quietly, making no move to pressure her decision. Finally, she gave a single, cautious nod. Lily reached decisively for the music box in the cart. "Can my music come too?" "Especially the music," Maxwell whispered, something long dormant awakening in his chest as the child's smile illuminated the gray evening. The elevator rose silently to the 48th floor, its glass walls revealing the city gradually spreading out below them in a tapestry of lights, piercing through the rainy darkness. Sarah stood rigidly near the doors, clutching Lily's hand. Her posture suggested she was ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. Maxwell maintained a respectful distance, painfully aware of how strange, how potentially threatening this situation must seem to them. Jenkins had been dismissed for the evening, his disapproval evident but unspoken. Professional to the end, he'd merely reminded Maxwell of tomorrow's 7 a.m. conference call before departing in a separate elevator. "Your house is in the sky?" Lily asked, pressing her face against the glass elevator wall, her breath creating a small cloud of fog that she promptly drew a star in. "Do clouds come visit?" "Something like that," Maxwell replied, his phone buzzing incessantly in his pocket, with messages he was, for once, ignoring. Board members, developers, lawyers, all demanding immediate responses about the West Side project, all suddenly, inexplicably unimportant. The penthouse doors opened silently to 6,000 square feet of minimalist luxury, concrete, glass, steel, soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the storm-washed city below, impeccably designed by a famous architect whose name Maxwell often forgot, photographed for architectural digests, completely unlived. No photographs adorned the walls, no books lay open on tables. No half-empty coffee cups or discarded sweaters betrayed a human presence. The kitchen gleamed with unused appliances. The living area featured furniture chosen for its design pedigree rather than comfort. The entire space resembled an upscale hotel suite, temporary, impersonal, waiting for life to happen within it. "Bathrooms through there?" Maxwell gestured awkwardly, suddenly seeing his home through their eyes. "Kitchen stocked. Help yourself to anything. Guest rooms down that hallway, towels in the cabinets." Sarah hesitated at the threshold, her eyes taking in the stark opulence with something between awe and discomfort. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Reed?" she asked directly, her voice quiet but firm. "People don't just help strangers without expecting something in return." Maxwell's usual sharp business instincts failed him. In negotiations, he always knew the right answer, the strategic response that would advance his position. Here, standing in his own home that suddenly felt foreign to him, he had no strategic answer. "I don't know," he admitted, the unfamiliar truth uncomfortable on his tongue. Lily had already scampered in, her small footprints leaving wet marks on the polished concrete floor. She carried her music box carefully with both hands, her precious cargo. "Mommy, look, you can see the whole world," she exclaimed, her face pressed against the panoramic window overlooking the glittering cityscape. "All the stars came down to live in houses." Sarah's face softened, watching her daughter's wonder, maternal love momentarily overriding caution. She stepped fully into the penthouse, crossing an invisible threshold of trust. "Thank you," she said simply to Maxwell, "for tonight." While Sarah helped Lily clean up, finding her warm clothes from a small backpack retrieved from their cart, Maxwell stood in his massive living room, staring at the untouched white sofa, the modern art he'd bought, because his decorators suggested it, the empty surfaces devoid of life's normal clutter. He owned everything around him, yet nothing felt like it belonged to him. His phone rang again. The board meeting, the West Side Development Project, the one that would demolish 3 blocks of affordable housing to build luxury apartments, the project that would increase shareholder value by 17%. His crowning achievement, they called it. From the guest room came the faint melody of Lily's music box, wound tight to play its song. The same lullaby she'd been singing on the street, the same one his mother had sung to him in a shelter, much like the one on 9th Street, before she'd gotten sick, before she'd died, leaving him alone at 17 with nothing but fierce determination never to be powerless again. Maxwell silenced his phone without answering it. For the first time in decades, something mattered more than business. Maxwell awoke to the unfamiliar sound of laughter echoing through his penthouse. For a moment, he didn't recognize his own home, the sound so foreign within these walls that it seemed to belong to another reality altogether. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the storm having passed during the night, leaving behind a washed-clean sky and startling clarity. He followed the sound, padding barefoot through his own home like an explorer in unknown territory. The hardwood floors felt cold beneath his feet. He'd never noticed that before. Had never walked these floors without slippers or shoes, had never really lived in this space he called home. In the kitchen, he found Lily sitting on a granite counter, her legs dangling playfully as Sarah stood at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes with ingredients she'd found in his untouched cupboards. The domesticity of the scene struck him with unexpected force. The kitchen, he'd had designed by a famous chef but rarely used, suddenly transformed into a living space filled with warmth and morning light. "Mr. Maxwell," Lily called out when she spotted him waving enthusiastically. "Mommy's making smiley pancakes. Do you want one with a mustache like yours?" The child pantomimed a bushy mustache with her fingers, giggling at her own joke. Sarah turned, embarrassment flashing across her features as she took in Maxwell's rumpled appearance, so different from the polished businessman of yesterday. "I'm sorry. We shouldn't have assumed. I should have asked before using your kitchen." "No, please." Maxwell raised his hand, surprising himself with the genuine smile that formed. "It's nice. And just Maxwell is fine." He moved to the kitchen island, accepting the mug of coffee Sarah cautiously offered. "No one's cooked in this kitchen since I bought the place 5 years ago." "Never?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "But where do you make cookies?" Something about the simple question, the assumption that homes were places where ordinary pleasures like cookies happened, struck Maxwell deeply. "I don't think I've made cookies since I was about your age," he admitted. Over a breakfast of misshapen but delicious pancakes, including one with a carefully crafted syrup mustache that made Lily dissolve into giggles, Maxwell learned their story. Sarah had been a music teacher at Ellis Elementary School before district-wide budget cuts eliminated her position along with dozens of others. Her husband, unable to handle the mounting financial pressure, had walked out shortly after, leaving behind bills and a half-empty apartment. 2 months of missed rent later, they were on the street, their belongings in storage they could no longer afford to maintain. "Lily never complains," Sarah said softly, her hand gently smoothing her daughter's unruly curls. "She just sings. Says it makes sad things better." Pride and heartbreak mingled in her voice. "What happened to the music box?" Maxwell asked, noticing the slight crack in its wooden frame where it sat on the counter, Lily having insisted it join them for breakfast. "Some boys at the shelter tried to take it," Lily explained matter-of-factly, without self-pity or drama. "I held on real tight. Grandma said music is more important than anything because it lives inside you even when everything else goes away." Maxwell's phone buzzed insistently on the counter, his assistant reminding him of 9 scheduled meetings. The development deal, waiting for his signature, the investors awaiting his decision, the world he'd built for himself demanding his return. "You have to work," Sarah stated, not asking, a woman who understood responsibility. "We've imposed enough. We'll head out." "No." Maxwell surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. "Stay, please. At least until you find something better." He hesitated, then added, "I have an extra key. Come and go as you need to." As he straightened his tie before leaving, slipping back into his business armor, Maxwell paused at a photo on his dresser, the only personal item in the entire penthouse. A woman with tired eyes but a gentle smile, holding a small boy with serious eyes standing in front of a brick building, the same shelter on 9th Street where Sarah and Lily had been headed the night before. Some coincidences feel too purposeful to ignore. As he picked up his briefcase, the weight of it felt different. Somehow, heavier with new responsibility, yet lighter with new purpose. The Reed Technologies boardroom embodied corporate power, 40 stories above street level, its glass walls offering commanding views of the city below. 20 executives in tailored suits surrounded a gleaming mahogany table, tablets, and water, bottles positioned with precise uniformity before each seat. Architectural renderings of the West Side development were projected on wall screens, sleek modern buildings rising from digitally erased existing neighborhoods. The West Side development requires immediate action, Maxwell. Henderson, his CFO, pushed the contracts forward with manicured fingers. His voice carried the confident authority of someone who had never questioned the morality of prosperity. We demolish next month. Construction begins in 60 days. The profit margins are extraordinary, 17% above our initial projections. Around the conference table, board members nodded approvingly, the synchronized movement reminiscent of a well-choreographed dance. This project would increase shareholder value by 17%. Numbers that made careers, built legacies, secured golden parachutes. "What about the residents?" Maxwell asked, the question slipping out before his business mind could censor. "It?" The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes blinked in synchronized confusion. "Excuse me?" Henderson blinked, his confident smile faltering momentarily. "The families currently living there? The businesses? The school? Where do they go?" Maxwell's hand rested on the glossy renderings, his finger tapping the spot where, in reality, children played in a schoolyard that would soon be demolished for a rooftop garden accessible only to luxury apartment owners. His COO, Victoria Chen, cleared her throat, exchanging glances with Henderson. "That's not really our concern, is it? The city approved the zoning changes, everything's legal. The residents received their 90-day notices last month." She adjusted her glasses with practiced precision. "Our responsibility is to our shareholders." Legal! The word hung in the air like a shield against moral complexity. Once it would have been enough for Maxwell. Once the mechanics of capitalism, its cold efficiencies and bloodless calculations, had seemed like adequate justification for any action that increased the bottom line. "I need more time," he announced, standing abruptly. "Maxwell," Henderson's voice sharpened with alarm, "we've been planning this for 18 months. The contractors are scheduled. The investors are committed. Your signature is the only thing. We need to proceed." But Maxwell was already walking toward the door, their protests fading behind him. His mind wasn't on profit projections or investment returns. It was fixed on a music box and its hauntingly familiar melody. In his office, he closed the door against Henderson's insistent follow-up and pulled up the address for 9th Street Shelter on his computer. His mother's face flashed in his memory, her exhaustion-lined eyes the same as he'd seen in Sarah's. They'd stayed there for 8 months when he was 6, after his father had disappeared with their savings. His mother had worked 3 jobs, coming to the shelter only to sleep a few hours before her next shift. He remembered the sound of her, humming that lullaby as she tucked him in, even when she was bone-tired. What would she think of the man he'd become? Of the empire built on decisions that never considered the human cost? His intercom buzzed, interrupting his uncomfortable reverie. "Sir?" His assistant's voice came through, tinged with unusual hesitation. "There's a call for you on line 1. It's from your penthouse." Maxwell grabbed the phone, a spike of concern cutting through his professional detachment. "Is everything okay?" "Mr. Maxwell." Lily's excited voice came through the line, dispelling his worry. "I found your piano. It's hiding behind the big plants. Can you play it when you come home? My mommy says she can teach you if you forgot how." In 30 years, no one had touched the baby grand nestled in the corner of his living room. Another piece of expensive furniture gathering dust. Another status symbol devoid of meaning. "I'll be home early," he promised, the word home suddenly holding new meaning. The spreadsheets on his screen, billions in assets, acquisitions, properties, suddenly seemed like arbitrary numbers rather than the measure of success he'd once believed them to be. The piano lid creaked as Maxwell opened it, dust particles dancing in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, perfectly tuned. His house manager saw to that, but never played. The black and white keys gleamed with untouched perfection, like a museum exhibit rather than an instrument meant to create joy. Lily climbed onto the bench beside him, her small frame dwarfed by the massive Steinway grand. Her feet dangled well, above the pedals, swinging slightly with excitement. She ran one finger reverently along the keys without pressing them, as if greeting an old friend. "My mom teaches piano," she announced proudly, looking up at Maxwell with complete trust that hadn't been there 24 hours earlier. "She's the best teacher ever. She taught lots of kids before we had to move." Sarah stood awkwardly in the doorway, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. She wore the same clothes as yesterday, now clean and dried. "I didn't mean for her to bother you," she said softly. "She's been talking about your piano all day. She's not bothering me." The sincerity in Maxwell's voice surprised even himself. He positioned his fingers over the keys, muscle memory returning from lessons. Decades passed. "My mother taught me a long time ago, before she got sick." The first notes were hesitant, rusty, with disuse. Maxwell stumbled, his corporate-trained perfectionism making him wince at the mistakes. But slowly, the melody emerged, the lullaby from Lily's music box, simple chords flowing one into another like a gentle stream, a song about stars shining through darkness, about hope persisting through difficult nights. Lily gasped in delight when she recognized the tune, her tiny hands reaching toward the higher keys. "That's Grandma's song!" Like this, Maxwell guided her finger to press a key. The note rang out, pure and clear. "Now you try." Sarah's professional instincts eventually overcame her hesitation. She stepped forward, her expertise evident in her confident posture as she approached the instrument. "Here, Lily, let's show Mr. Maxwell how we do our finger exercises." She demonstrated a simple 5-note pattern, her fingers moving with practiced grace despite months away from any keyboard. For 2 hours, the penthouse filled with something it had never contained before. Music, laughter, life. The sounds echoed off the minimalist surfaces, warming the cold modernist design with humanity. Maxwell's phone remained unanswered in his pocket, Henderson's increasingly urgent messages unread. Lily proved a quick study, her natural talent evident, even to Maxwell's untrained ear. Her small face screwed up in concentration as she carefully placed her fingers according to her mother's instructions, beaming with pride when she successfully played a simple melody. "She has perfect pitch," Sarah explained, watching her daughter with unconcealed pride. "She can identify any note just by hearing it. It's quite rare." Later, as Lily dozed on the sofa, exhausted from the excitement, Sarah sat across from Maxwell in the kitchen, a cup of tea warming her hands. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished floors, painting the austere space with golden light. "She's gifted," Sarah confessed, her voice soft so as not to wake her daughter. "Her teachers said so before." She gestured vaguely, encompassing all they'd lost. "Before everything fell apart. She needs stability, lessons, opportunities I can't give her right now." The admission clearly pained her, a mother acknowledging her inability to provide what her child deserved. "She'll have them," Maxwell said. Without thinking, the words emerging from some deeper place than calculation, Sarah's eyes hardened slightly. "We can't accept charity forever. I need to find work, get back on my feet." "It's not charity." Maxwell walked to the window, looking out at the city spread below, the glittering towers and hidden alleyways, the penthouses and the shelters, all part of the same ecosystem. His city, he'd always thought, but it had never truly felt like home until now. "Sarah, the development my company is planning, it would demolish the building where you used to teach." "Ellis Elementary!" Sarah's voice sharpened, maternal instinct extending to all her former students. "That's where half the neighborhood children go. Some of them walk because their parents can't afford transportation to schools farther away." Maxwell turned back to her, determination settling into his features like a mask falling away to reveal the true face beneath. "Not if I can help it," Sarah studied him, seeing beyond the expensive suit to something unexpected. "You really mean that, don't you?" Maxwell nodded, surprised to discover that he did. Somewhere between a rainy street corner and a piano lesson, priorities he'd spent decades establishing had shifted beneath him like sand, revealing something solid underneath. "He's going soft," whispered Henderson to the executive team gathered in the glass-walled conference room. Heads bent together in conspiratorial concern, their reflections multiplied in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Living with some homeless woman and her kid. Has anyone ever seen Maxwell Reed cry before? Because Thompson in security says he was practically sobbing when he brought them to the penthouse. Maxwell pretended not to hear as he passed the conference room, his footsteps deliberate on the marble floors. Let them talk. For the first time in decades, he didn't care about their opinions. The Maxwell Reed of a week ago would have fired someone for such insubordination. Today, it seemed as insignificant as yesterday's stock fluctuations. The whispers followed him down the corridor, concerned murmurs about mental breakdowns, midlife crises, potential shareholder lawsuits. His executive assistant avoided eye contact as he passed her desk, as if his recent behavior might be contagious. In his office, architectural plans for the West Side development covered his desk. He'd been studying them for hours, making notes, running new calculations, drawing red circles around schools, community centers, small businesses that would be erased by his company's vision of progress. His assistant entered cautiously, as one might approach an unpredictable animal. "Sir, the board is requesting an emergency meeting at 3. About—" She hesitated, choosing her words with precision. "Your house guests and the development delay." Maxwell looked up, his gaze sharp enough to make her take an involuntary step backward. Some parts of him remained unchanged. "Tell them I'll be there in 20 minutes. And get me the City Planning Commission's contact information." "Yes, sir." She retreated, relief evident in her posture. Alone again, Maxwell opened his desk drawer and removed the one personal item he kept at the office: his mother's obituary, laminated and worn at the edges from handling. Margaret Reed, dead at 39 from cancer that might have been treatable with earlier intervention. If she'd had health insurance, if she hadn't been working 3 minimum wage jobs to keep them afloat after leaving the shelter. Her final words to him: "Build something that matters, Max. Not just something big." He'd thought he had. Reed Technologies employed thousands. Their products were used globally. He donated to charities at tax time. He'd built exactly what he thought she meant, something significant. Something that would ensure he never felt powerless again. His phone chimed with a message from Sarah, a video of Lily playing the simple melody he'd taught her on the piano. Her small face concentrated with effort, her tongue caught between her teeth, then broke into a wide smile at her achievement. The video ended with her waving at the camera. "Look, Mr. Maxwell, I practiced all morning." Something inside Maxwell shifted, like tectonic plates realigning. A decision crystallized. He'd been building monuments to insecurity, not monuments to meaning. When he entered the boardroom, the executives fell silent, watching him warily. Their concern was understandable. In 20 years, Maxwell Reed had never deviated from their understanding of rational behavior, the relentless pursuit of profit, growth, and market dominance. "I've made some adjustments to the West Side plan," Maxwell announced without preamble, spreading new blueprints across the table. The renderings showed a different vision. The school renovated rather than demolished, housing units incorporated into the design, green spaces preserved. "We're not demolishing Ellis Elementary. In fact, we're going to renovate it, and we're building affordable housing units alongside the luxury apartments." Henderson sputtered, his face reddening. "That will cut our profits by 30%. Maxwell finished for him. "Yes, I know. I can do math. I also know what it's like to be homeless." The statement hung in the air, a revelation that explained everything and nothing. "Sir?" Victoria Chen ventured carefully. "The board is concerned about your attachment to this family. It seems to be clouding your judgment." Maxwell's gaze swept the room, meeting each pair of eyes directly. "My judgment has never been clearer. We're proceeding with the revised plans. Those who don't want to participate are welcome to tender their resignations." He walked out, leaving stunned silence behind him. For the first time in his career, Maxwell Reed had made a business decision that had nothing to do with the bottom line. "It doesn't open anymore," Lily explained as she and Maxwell sat at the kitchen island that evening, examining her music box under the warm pendant lights. The apartment glowed with a coziness it had never possessed before, curtains drawn against the night, the smell of pasta sauce Sarah had prepared lingering in the air. "It got broken when we had to leave our apartment real fast. The moving men weren't being careful with our things." Maxwell turned the wooden box in his hands, respecting its significance even as he assessed the damage. The craftsmanship was remarkable, hand-carved. Oak with inlaid mother-of-pearl stars on the lid, the hinges delicately worked brass, now bent out of alignment. This wasn't a mass-produced trinket, but a family heirloom, the kind of object that carried generations of memories in its grain. "The angel inside is stuck," Lily continued, her small finger tracing the tarnished latch. "She can't dance to the music anymore, but she still sings, in here." She tapped her heart solemnly. "May I try to fix it?" Maxwell asked with unusual deference. In business, he never asked permission. He simply acted, confident in his authority. But this small box belonged to Lily. In a way, his possessions had never belonged to him. Lily nodded solemnly, her eyes serious. "Be careful with her. She's very old. Grandma said she was her grandma's before she was hers." In his home workshop, room he'd designed but barely used, filled with precision tools for the woodworking hobby he'd never found time to pursue, Maxwell gently worked on the delicate hinge with jeweler's tools. Sarah watched from the doorway, her shoulder leaning against the frame. "The board meeting?" she asked quietly, concern evident in her voice. 2 days of shared space had created an unexpected ease between them, a comfort neither had anticipated. "Went about as expected." Maxwell shrugged, adjusting the magnifying glass to better see the tiny mechanism. "They think I've lost my mind. Have you?" The question held no judgment, only genuine curiosity. He looked up, meeting her eyes with a smile. A real smile, not the practiced one he used for business photographs and press conferences. "Found it, maybe?" With careful manipulation and the application of a drop of oil to the seized mechanism, the music box's hidden compartment finally sprang open. Inside, beneath the mechanical components, lay something unexpected, a yellowed, folded piece of paper, protected from time in its wooden sanctuary. "What's that?" Lily peered over his arm, her curiosity immediate and unrestrained. Maxwell carefully unfolded it, the paper fragile with age. Not a note as he'd expected, but a faded photograph. 3 young women standing together outside a brick building, arms linked, laughing at the camera. One of them unmistakably Sarah's mother, judging by the striking resemblance. "My grandma." Lily pointed excitedly at the woman in the center. Maxwell's breath caught, his finger hovering over the woman on the right. Younger, healthier, but unmistakable. "And my mother," he whispered, recognition stunning him into momentary silence. Sarah took the photo with trembling hands. "That's impossible. How could—" They knew each other. Maxwell's mind raced, childhood memories surfacing that had been buried beneath decades of ambition and acquisition. "They volunteered at 9th Street Shelter together. Your mother played?" "The piano there. She taught me my first notes while my mother worked evening shifts." The universe rarely deals in coincidences this precise. The random encounter on a rainy street corner suddenly seemed like the culmination of a story that had begun decades before. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she studied the photograph. "You're that little boy, the one my mother always spoke about? The one who played by ear after hearing a piece just once?" Maxwell nodded, memories flooding back, a kind woman with Sarah's eyes, guiding his small fingers on the shelter's out-of-tune upright piano. The same woman who had given his mother the music box when they finally found an apartment, saying everyone deserved a little beauty in their lives, 3 generations connected by a melody, by struggle, by perseverance, by a small wooden box that had found its way home. Some things come full circle. Maxwell said softly, as Lily nestled against his side, humming her grandmother's song. The mechanical ballerina, freed from her seized prison, began to turn slowly to the melody, her faded pink tutu once again spinning in time to the music that had sustained 3 families through their darkest hours. Cameras flashed in blinding succession as Maxwell stepped up to the podium, erected outside Ellis Elementary School, Sarah and Lily standing beside him in new clothes that couldn't hide their natural dignity. The press had been buzzing for weeks about Maxwell Reed's mysterious house guests and his sudden, dramatic change in business direction. Speculation ranged from mental breakdown to tax evasion scheme to elaborate publicity stunt. Behind them, scaffolding already embraced the brick. School building, workers busy with the renovation that had begun the week before, months ahead of the original demolition schedule. Community members gathered behind the press barricade, many of them former students or parents from Sarah's classes, holding handmade signs of support. Today, Reed Technologies is proud to announce the establishment of the Melody Foundation. Maxwell spoke clearly into the forest of microphones, his voice carrying the same confidence he'd always possessed, but with a new undercurrent of genuine passion. With an initial endowment of $2 billion, approximately half my personal wealth, we will focus on addressing homelessness and educational inequality in our city. The announcement sent a ripple of shocked murmurs through the assembled journalists. $2 billion was an unprecedented commitment, even for a man worth $9 billion. This wasn't a token charitable contribution, but a fundamental redirection of resources. The Foundation's first initiative will be the completion of the West Side Community Development, which has been redesigned as a mixed-income residential area. With expanded educational facilities, including the fully renovated Ellis Elementary School, reporters shouted questions simultaneously, creating a cacophony of curiosity and skepticism. Their queries focused on the drastic change in the West Side development plans, about shareholder concerns over plummeting stock prices, about Maxwell's sanity and business acumen. Several called out questions about Sarah and Lily directly, their hunger for personal drama evident. Lily tugged at Maxwell's sleeve, seemingly unintimidated by the media frenzy. Maxwell bent down without hesitation, perfectly willing to keep dozens of reporters waiting, while a 5-year-old whispered in his ear. He nodded, smiling, then straightened to address the crowd again. A very wise person recently asked me what the point of having a big house in the sky is if you're all alone in it. His gaze moved to Lily, then Sarah, a moment of genuine connection amidst the media circus. I don't have a good answer for that. The first phase of the Foundation's work, he explained, would renovate Ellis Elementary, where Sarah would be reinstated as music director with an expanded program emphasizing arts education for all students, regardless of economic background. The adjacent property, originally slated for luxury condominiums, would become transitional housing for families experiencing homelessness with support services and job placement assistance. That evening, Henderson and 2 board members arrived at the penthouse, stone-faced and bearing leather portfolios filled with legal documents. Maxwell welcomed them into what had become a very different space in just 2 weeks. Children's drawings now adorned the once stark refrigerator. A vase of wildflowers Lily had picked stood on the coffee table. Sheet music lay open on the piano, where Sarah had been giving Maxwell refresher lessons. The shareholders are concerned, Henderson began without preamble, eyeing Sarah and Lily warily as they sat at the piano across the room, working on a duet they'd been practicing. Your personal involvement with these beneficiaries represents a conflict of interest that potentially breaches your fiduciary responsibility. Victoria Chen, the COO, spoke next. The stock has dropped 17%, Maxwell. 17% in 2 weeks. The third visitor, Reed Technologies' lead counsel, slid a document across the table. The board has prepared this agreement. You retain your ownership stake, but step down as CEO. The foundation receives a more reasonable endowment of $50 million, and the West Side development proceeds according to the original plan. Maxwell took the papers without looking at them. "You're asking me to choose? The company you built," Henderson stated flatly, "or this situation you've created." From the piano came the sound of the lullaby, Sarah and Lily playing together in perfect harmony, their heads bent close in concentration. The melody filled the penthouse with the same warmth it had brought to a shelter decades before. Maxwell tore the papers in half with deliberate slowness. That wasn't really a choice at all. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights blinked on as dusk descended. No longer a business landscape to be conquered, but a community of lives, intertwined in ways invisible from 48 floors up, until someone helped you truly see. Rain streamed down the windows of Ellis Elementary's new music room, echoing the downpour from that fateful night half a year before. The room gleamed with possibility, polished hardwood floors, sound-absorbing, panels in cheerful colors, and a semicircle of brand-new upright pianos where once there had been only a single out-of-tune instrument. Inside, 30 children from diverse backgrounds sat attentively on colorful cushions as Sarah demonstrated proper finger positioning on the gleaming grand piano at the front of the room. Her confidence had fully returned, her expertise now supported by resources she'd once only dreamed about. A small plaque near the door read, "The Margaret and Eleanor Music Room," a tribute to two mothers who had found friendship in difficult circumstances decades before. Maxwell stood in the doorway, watching Lily among her classmates. No longer the homeless girl singing on a street corner, but still the same bright spirit that had changed his life with a song. She caught his eye and gave a small wave before returning her attention to her mother's lesson. The sequence was familiar to him now. He often joined them for practice in the evenings, his own skills improving alongside Lily's rapidly advancing talent. The West Side development had transformed into something unrecognizable from its original plans. Affordable housing units stood alongside market-rate apartments in a thoughtfully integrated design that had won architectural awards for innovation. The elementary school had doubled in size, now including a community arts center open evenings and weekends. A health clinic offered services regardless of insurance status, and a job training facility helped parents gain skills while their children attended school. Henderson and half the board had resigned in protest when Maxwell refused to reverse course. Reed Technologies' stock had initially plummeted, then steadily risen as new investors, ones who valued social responsibility alongside profit, had stepped in. Maxwell had stepped down as CEO but remained as chairman, focusing his energy on the Melody Foundation while mentoring his successor, a younger executive who understood that business could serve humanity rather than the other way around. After by class, Maxwell, Sarah, and Lily walked home together, not to the penthouse which Maxwell had donated as a fundraising venue for the foundation, but to a comfortable brownstone near the school. Their breath formed clouds in the chilly autumn air as they huddled under one large umbrella, Lily between them, occasionally jumping into puddles with deliberate glee. "Will you tell me the story again?" Lily asked as they turned onto their street, leaves swirling around their feet. "About when you heard me singing." It had become a ritual between them, this retelling. Some stories need to be repeated to be fully understood, to reveal new layers of meaning with each iteration. "I was lost," Maxwell began, taking her small hand in his. "Not the kind of lost where you can't find your way home, the kind where you have a home but can't find your way to yourself." His voice had softened over these months, the sharp edges of corporate authority rounded by genuine connection. Sarah slipped her hand into his other one, the engagement ring on her finger catching the light even on this gray day. Their relationship had evolved gradually, built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than the whirlwind romance of movies. a foundation as solid as the one they'd built for the community around them. In their living room, a space filled with books, music, and evidence of a child's creative exuberance, sat the restored music box on the mantelpiece, now playing perfectly. Again, beside it, 2 photographs in a single frame, Maxwell's mother and Sarah's mother at the shelter decades ago, and the 3 of them today, a family created by chance, cemented by choice. "And then what happened?" Lily prompted, though she knew the answer by heart. "Then I heard a little girl singing a song my mother used to sing," Maxwell continued, helping her up the brownstone steps. "And I remembered something I'd forgotten." "What did you remember?" Lily asked, performing her part in their shared story. "That the most valuable things can't be bought or sold," he answered, opening the door to their home. "That meaning comes from connection, that sometimes the universe brings people together in ways that seem like coincidence, but feel like destiny." Sarah smiled, hanging up their wet coats. "And that music can open doors long after the last note fades. Some songs are meant to be passed down, some voices are meant to be heard, and sometimes the wealthiest person is the one who stops to listen." The music box on the mantel played its familiar melody as they gathered in the kitchen to make hot chocolate, a family brought together by a lullaby that had endured across generations, teaching the same lesson to each, that in the darkest nights, stars still shine. You just